Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where your host is now approaching that difficult stage where my hair is in dire need of a haircut. I've reached that moment where I seem to have permanent bed hair. And it doesn't look like I'm going to have access to a hairdresser anytime soon as we continue this lockdown period. So my question to you all listening is, do I shave it off? Have one of those home haircuts? Or do I continue looking dishevelled? What are you doing? Let me know, as always, by emailing me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, or getting me on Twitter and Instagram, LinkedIn. Just look for me at Neil C. Hughes. But this is not a podcast host grooming tips podcast. No. It's a tech show. And today, whether through lift and shift or re-architecting, almost every large enterprise has carried out some kind of migration to the cloud. And with increasing pressure on IT operations to effectively manage a hybrid big data architecture, that is a trending problem. And that is large enterprises in particular are running enormous big data clusters with thousands of nodes that require full stack visibility in order to optimize application performance, support SLAs, uncover infrastructure inefficiencies, and minimize that mean time to repair. This is all the unsexy side of IT that most people don't get to see. And on top of that, they also need to make Spark apps run faster and stop Hadoop clusters from blowing up. So what is the solution? Well, in the quest to control cloud spend, analytics are key, especially if you've got any chance of meeting budgets. Organisations will also need more transparency to determine those usage patterns. And understanding average peak computing demand, map storage patterns, determine the number of core processors required, treat non-production and virtualized workloads with care, and so much more. The list goes on and on. So how do we get to that point? And that's a topic that I want to explore today. So come with me all the way to the US so we can speak with Ashwin Shi, CEO of Pepperdata. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yes, my name is Ashwin Shi. I am the CEO of Pepperdata. My background is I originally started at IBM Research, then went off and worked at Oracle in the early days, then executive positions at a company called Silicon Graphics, which no longer exists, but some of you may recall all of the work done in the first Terminator movies and the first Jurassic Park movies and the first Star Wars movies. All of that was actually originated at Silicon Graphics. We also built a Nintendo 64. So amongst a list of all the wonderful things that we did, we were the Google of that era. And then after that, I went to Applied Materials, and then a number of startups, and then running a bunch of different companies, including public ones. And, back into running startups. I've attempted to retire a number of times, but it doesn't suit me very well.
And although the company might not be here anymore, that's one hell of a legacy to leave behind, isn't it? And just about every pop culture reference you can imagine is imprinted there, isn't it?
I guess so. It's a friend of mine once told me that there are two things you get good at as you get old. Yeah. History and politics. I think I reflect the history side of that.
So my understanding is that Pepperdata offers real-time visibility for troubleshooting, debugging and planning, but it also provides automated tuning for optimal performance on-prem and in the cloud. But for the non-techie business leaders listening to this podcast today, what kind of problems is it that you solve for your customers with Pepperdata?
So our customers tend to be people who are running the big analytics stacks, big data analytics stacks. They are frequently running these things on hundreds of machines, whether they're, again, in on-premise or in the cloud. So big data is different than sort of your standard computing paradigm, if you will, where, a single machine or a small set of machines solves a single problem. Here, what happens is you have hundreds or thousands of machines solving a single problem. So the problem complexity is very, very high. The amount of resources and the cost on this is very, very large, both in terms of compute resource storage as well as in terms of I/O as well, because there's a lot of data, hence the term big data, and a lot of compute. So as these problems get very complex, when you have bugs, these can eat up a lot of resource, which translated means it eats up a lot of money very, very fast. And I'm talking about millions of dollars. So the ability to be able to understand what's going wrong, pinpoint it very quickly, particularly for those problems that are really difficult to understand, and be able to get to the root cause so you can fix it quickly is effectively translates to a massive amount of savings in terms of actual cost to the end customer. So that's the observability side of it. The other side of it is the automated tuning. What happens is a lot of these systems have applications written by developers who, assume that they're going to get a lot of resources or need a lot of resources for their applications to run. When in reality, what happens on these machines as all these applications are running is that they may use a lot fewer resources than originally anticipated at any given point in time. As a result, the machines have idle resources available. What we do is we help the schedulers on these machines understand that they're idle resources and then utilize them so that the machines are utilized at maximum efficiency. That translates to millions of dollars of savings in terms of being able to buy new hardware or being able to pay for cloud resources that are just simply not necessary because no one is using them. Both of these two things result in massive ROIs. And as a result, we have some of the largest companies in the world as customers of ours, including several companies in the Fortune 10.
And I've got to ask, though, what's the story behind Pepperdata? Because I feel there's got to be a story behind the name, too.
Well, I don't know if there's a story behind the name, but there is a story behind the company. So Pepperdata was originally formed by two gentlemen that both came out of Yahoo. Big data originated essentially at Yahoo and Google. There was a system called Hadoop that was developed at these places, Hadoop and MapReduce. And what wound up happening is that the two founders of the company, Sean and Chad, they both were some of the original users of this big data system. They helped develop the core of what modern Hadoop is. And when they were starting to use it, they realized that there was a much larger opportunity to help other people also do this type of big data analytics, and that enterprises were going to embrace this. That's why they started the company. Unfortunately, there isn't a great story around the Pepperdata name. The founders threw around a bunch of names. Pepperdata was a domain that was available, and they took it. So I'm sorry to say there's nothing I can say to spice it up, so to speak.
Now, according to Gartner, most monitoring solutions, while valuable in their own right, have not optimized the process of troubleshooting performance and availability problems. And users do often complain now of limited visibility with too few tools or too much complexity with too many tools and everything in between. So, Gartner have made a great point here, but how are you tackling these problems with Pepperdata?
So I think there's a distinction to be made. When Gartner talks about the so-called application performance monitoring or APM tools, they're really talking about what I would call classical application performance management. Tools that monitor the standard, or I would call it the small data stack. The big data stack is very, very specialized. While there is movement from the APM vendors to try and embrace the big data stack, they don't have the ability to gather the type of data that we do, provide the type of visibility, or actually do the tuning. It requires rather specific plumbing and rather specific knowledge of the stack in order to make that happen. They have not done that. And we are one of the few that's really focusing on the big data side of it. So we've spent a lot of time with Gartner. We believe that Gartner understands that we have done a good job on addressing all of the kinds of issues that our customers are seeing. And certainly there's tremendous evidence of that in our customer base.
And in this current climate, I think there's so many things going through business leaders' mind. They may be starting to think a lot more about spend now. But do you think business leaders understand the importance of removing the blindfold to actually control their cloud spend too? Are you noticing anything around that?
Absolutely. Look, the cloud stampede is clearly there.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that as people have gone to the cloud, they've had a budget. And what they've realized is by giving their developers in their business units free rein and saying, here you go, you've got the cloud, which means you can have as many resources as you want. IT isn't going to stop you from doing anything. Well, the developers actually do that. And within 1 month, the annual budget is already spent. What's interesting is that, if you think about IT, what was the role of IT? IT made sure that no one got preference over anyone else, or at least the priority of the business was reflected in the way resources were given. Since resources were limited, they very carefully administered the resources, and there was no such thing as a runaway job that could take forever, that didn't spin down a bunch of instances and was billing things and no one knew about it. They kept an eye on everything because they needed to control everything. It was a finite pot to deal with. When businesses took over and started spending money in the cloud, they didn't have any of this discipline or people that knew any of this discipline. As a result, costs went rampant. And now IT is being asked by many CFOs to come back and put discipline back into the spend, even inside the cloud. So you're going to see a lot more discipline in cloud spending, especially from the big enterprises, because it is necessary to control spend. Without that, they'll run out of budget very quickly, and then it will be really tough for them.
And I'm curious, from the conversations that you're having with your customers and probably scattered across various industries, are there any trends or key challenges that they're coming to you and asking for your help with at the moment?
Absolutely. So I think we touched on the cloud.
Yeah.
So the first thing I think is there's definitely interest in being able to figure out, how do I transition to the cloud? What is the correct cloud strategy? And, everybody talks about this notion of lift and shift. I take my application that's running on my internal cluster, I lift it and shift it over to the cloud and make it run. That's clearly one way to go about doing things. But the cloud also forces one to think about, in order to optimally use it, re-architecting some of these solutions. So there are a lot of conversations around, how do I re-architect my current stack so I can take advantage of the various services that are available inside the cloud as native services. So that's one big trend that's taking place, aside from the lift and shift. I think people have largely gone past the lift and shift, are now thinking about re-architecting. But the other thing I think that is really top of mind for a lot of our customers is to make sure that they don't become captive to a single cloud vendor. And that's really important, because what's interesting is that it's very inexpensive to buy storage in the cloud. It's very, very expensive to actually remove your data from the cloud. And that's intentionally done by the cloud vendors to lock you in. And the big enterprises are very aware of that. And they're negotiating very, very hard on so-called egress costs so that they can get their data in and out. Moreover, the majority of the large customers are going after what I would call a hybrid multi-cloud strategy. So they're not beholden to a single cloud vendor, hence multi-cloud. So at least 2 cloud vendors. And as I said, they're negotiating the egress costs so that it's actually easy for them to slosh their data back and forth between on-premise, the other cloud vendor, and the cloud vendor that they're dealing with currently. So the data becomes transportable. And then they're also very keen on maintaining core data on-premise. So they think about the cloud, or are starting to think about the cloud, as a way to have burst capacity for being able to do things that they weren't structured to be able to do. So if they suddenly need something, they can go spin up a bunch of things in the cloud, get the results that they need, and then bring the data back. But a lot of them are really thinking about the data asset as really belonging in on-premise, in their own infrastructure, and then bursting it to the right places to the various clouds that they're going to do contracts with.
And I appreciate you probably can't mention any names, but are there any examples that you could, or use cases that you could possibly share that are just help listeners visualize just how much value and how much help you're offering to these people?
Well, I mean, there are some instances that I can give you specific examples. Yeah. We are globally deployed at Citibank. Citibank uses us to manage and to performance tune all of their big data infrastructure. We help Comcast get more capacity out of their infrastructure. So all of the Comcast boxes that you see out there for doing your cable TV and your internet are all monitored. All that data goes back to a central set of servers, and then they analyze those servers to figure out whether there are any patterns to failures, issues are happening, and things of that sort. All of those servers use our technology to be able to maximize throughput. And Comcast has gotten 30 to 50% improvement in performance as a result of that. The largest travel site on the net uses us. One of the largest retailers in the world uses us. One of the largest consumer electronics companies in the world uses us. So we're pretty ingrained in very, very large enterprises. And look, we wouldn't be winning those businesses and expanding, because we are expanding in all of those businesses. We wouldn't be able to do that if it weren't for the fact that we're delivering tremendous ROI for our customers.
And do you have any advice for people listening on how they can stay right-sized post-migration as well? Because we've talked about a few problems there, but I think this will really offer value to them too.
So obviously my answer is, get Pepperdata.
Yeah.
Right. If we install Pepperdata on your cloud instances, we can understand everything that is taking place. We can also help you auto scale. We can shut down instances automatically, and we can also pick the right type of instances that you're running. So partnering with us will allow you to do exactly the kinds of things that Comcast is doing, but you can do that in the cloud as well as you can do it on premise. And by the way, we do that for customers today.
And although we are living in a period of uncertainty at the moment, and everything seems to be out the window, and we're looking at new ways of working and thinking, what's next for Pepperdata? Is there anything you can share with me there?
Well, I think a couple of interesting trends here. Companies that rely on data and are data-driven to be able to make decisions are going to come out of this pandemic economic disaster scenario far, far better, because they'll be able to understand where they need to flex, where they need to move, where are the optimal positions for them to take. Those are exactly the companies that are using our software. As the world becomes more and more data-driven, and it's sad to say that something like this forces that to happen, we see a tremendous uptick in our business. And we believe that we can continue helping them. Obviously, what we're doing is we're listening to our customers. We're very, very careful about understanding what it is that they need, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's to support the various, cloud data warehouse systems like Snowflake and Redshift and BigQuery, or streaming systems like Kafka, or other technologies that are coming out. They're looking to us to help them figure out how to get those technologies embedded in their architecture, and then be able to make sure that they're using those technologies optimally. We're lockstep with our customers. We listen, we learn, and we move forward with them.
And for anyone listening that'd like to find out a little bit more information about the kind of thing that you're doing, or even carry on this conversation and ask your team a question, what's the best way of doing that?
Clearly, our website. There are various different ways you can interact with us through our website. Please feel free to do that. So it's www.pepperdata.com. We have a lot of resources for you to be able to look at on our website. And there's also emails like info@pepperdata.com that you can use to learn more about us. We're happy to get on the phone and talk to you. We're happy to provide advice. We're ready to help wherever we can.
Well, a huge thank you for coming on the podcast today. Like I said a few moments ago, we are in a period of uncertainty. But as you said there, one of the most important things for businesses now is to make data-driven decisions. And making those kind of decisions could be the success or failure of your company. So a big thank you for coming on and highlighting a few of the problems, but equally a way to get around that and a way to move forward.
I'd just like to end with one thing, and that is, since we are facing this incredible pandemic globally, I'd ask everyone that's listening, please be careful. Please take care of yourself and your loved ones, and Godspeed. Hopefully, we'll get through this all together, and the end will result in a better use of our planet and a better understanding of each other.
I couldn't agree more, and a perfect moment to end on. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Having spoken with Ash from Pepperdata there, the big takeaways for me seems to be that big data teams ultimately need powerful, in-depth insights to visualize and optimize big data operations instantly at scale. They need to access a single dashboard for all those big data environments and initiation of automated infrastructure optimization. They were just a few takeaways that I wrote down furiously during the interview there. So a big thank you to Ash for coming on and sharing some of the great work they're doing with Pepperdata there. But remember, if you want to talk about anything in today's conversation, give me home haircut tips or just ask me a question. Whatever it is, you can email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn @NeilCHughes, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So I'm going to walk off into the sunset now. I've got even more podcast episodes to edit, but have no fear. I'm not going to neglect you guys. I will be back same time, same place tomorrow with another guest for your listening pleasure. So a big thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.